I was tempted to call this session the new whiteboard because it's a new whiteboard and it's a clever one. So we're going to see in the grand experiment whether it works. But a little bit of experiment. Actually, before that, because I've learned a few lessons being in this house that you should always try and represent the Father. And Bill tells jokes, so I told one recently at Twin View. It was the best response I'd ever got to a joke, and I thought, actually, this might start to work for me, Because sometimes I struggle with the humor because I'm not sure whether it's a bit too British, But 3 ladies all went to heaven at the same time, and they just died and went to heaven. And they got up there, and Peter's there just giving them the drill of how heaven operates. And he said, look, there's really only one rule. It's just the one rule. Don't step on the ducks. And so they enter into heaven, and there's the one rule. Don't step on the ducks. And they realize why, because heaven appears to be full of ducks. There are ducks everywhere. And on day 2, one of the women steps on a duck. And almost immediately, Peter came along, and with him is this rather grotesque-looking man, and really ugly would probably be the best description. And Peter immediately chains this man to the lady, and off she goes. A few days later, the second lady has the same mishap. She steps on a duck, and again the same thing happens, and Peter comes and chains a man to this lady, and off she wanders into heaven. The third lady is like, that is not going to happen to me. There's no way that I'm spending eternity chained to somebody that looks like those men. And she manages 3-4 months of walking around heaven and not stepping on the ducks. And then all of a sudden, one day, Peter comes along with this absolutely Greek godlike man with him. And he just takes a chain and he straps this man and chains this man to this third lady. And the third lady stands there and goes, wow, I don't know what I did to deserve that. And the man immediately replies, well, I don't know about you, but I trod on a duck. Brutal, but fun. There are a few things that you've been hearing around here, and I'm hoping, there we go. This is the new technology. I write on it, it goes up there. Makes me happy, to say the least. The wine, heaven on earth, 5-fold. Heaven's government is family. Anyone heard any of those phrases around here? They're things that we hear a lot around here, aren't they? And you've probably heard them all already this week. I just want to have a look at them. I've called this message Leading Organizational Transition. We live in a lot of transition, don't we? Are you experiencing a lot of transition? In fact, are your heads buzzing just sitting in here because you got Danny going this stuff here, and you got Bill here, and you got Eric here, and we have Chris tonight, and we'll be introducing ideas, we'll be introducing teachings, and basically a lot of it adds up to a whole lot of change and a whole lot of transition. What's interesting about these is you can start to look at them through some different lenses. What? Why? We could add to the wine the presence. We could add revival, if I could spell it. There is another I in the middle there. We can make this culture. Eric talking about culture last night. I would add in there heaven on all the earth, and heaven's government, how, and probably some who in there. And every organization, I believe, on the planet is in at least one of 4 transitions. But I've come to the conclusion that you actually can't touch one of those without affecting all the others. And so as soon as you sit in here and you're going, oh, it's all about the wine, there's an effect on all of these. This really is visional transition. This is missional transition. This is cultural transition. And this is structural transition. And there is a whole lot of transition going on. We actually live in the days of the greatest change this planet has ever seen. Why is this visional? Because we've started to see, haven't we, that we're moving from pastoral to apostolic. Something's been changing. We put a different structure. Danny shared it yesterday in Danny's Genius that he shares it. We've had pastors for too long who haven't been connected to the apostolic, to the prophetic. And what that's really meant is they've not been connected to heaven. And from the missional point of view, something's changed, hasn't it? I mean, there are many ways that you can talk about the change that we've experienced in that world. But, you know, we gather now to experience the presence. We come for revival. We've moved from being about gathering as many people as we can to sending as many people as we possibly can. There's been a shift. What's the reason why? You know, Danny yesterday was saying, we keep going to these places around the world, don't we? We go to Lakeland, we go to Pensacola, we go to Argentina, we go, of course, to Bethel, we go to Toronto. What were we doing? We were going there and we were tasting some wine, the presence, the revival, and our whys have been shifted. And I'll come back to that in a moment. And of course, structurally, I'll never forget the day that Bill said to me, heaven's government is family, Paul. And all of a sudden, something changed. That we went from rules to relationships. And I'll come back to that. But this huge shift here, where we're all teaching through that thought that, it's all about family. I used to think it just meant that the grandkids would run up and down the front row of church on a Sunday morning and nobody was worried about them. That was it. Or, make sure you have one potluck a year in your calendar. But it's not that. It's not the sideshow. It is the main event. It's the main event. One of the interesting things that a lot of people say is, they go, I'll hear them say it, they say, I'm so amazed at how painful relational issues are in the church. Why are we so amazed? Why would we be so amazed when the greatest price that has ever been paid was paid to restore relationship? So why would we be surprised that the greatest challenge and the greatest pain that we will experience in our worlds of leadership is difficulties in relationship? Because Jesus paid the greatest price to restore relationships. He didn't choose something else. He chose that because that's what it's all about. That book there, he wants his kids back. That's basically what it is. There's a whole load of chapters in there, but the goal is God wants his kids back. He wants his family back. So we've been learning that. And of course, heaven on earth and realizing that there's something's changed. What's the change there? Oh, we've gone from going to heaven to bringing heaven here. Just that one shift alone changes the way we think, but of course it's much more than that. Massive transition that we've been going through in the body of Christ. It's almost like Apple-like. It just needs a little bit of help, and it could have been an apple that I was using there. But I hope you like this whiteboard. Sean Buckley on my team has researched for 2 years to make me happy, basically, and he succeeded. So kudos to him. The changes that we've had, pastoral to apostolic, that's been going on. I just mentioned it with the product. This is huge. This changes everything. We go from sheep counting to city transformation. That's what we go from. We go from gathering to sending. We go from just catching to catching and releasing. That's basically what we go to. Does that make sense? This is massive. These changes that we're all a part of. And you sit here and you're listening to people teaching and saying, we got to start doing this. And your head's possibly buzzing. And we've gone from church, haven't we, to kingdom. I love Chris's phrase on this. Not all the kingdom's in the church, but all the church is in the kingdom. We've gone here. Fascinating, connected to that. And one day I think I might get to the bottom of what I think about it, what it means to me. But Jesus said, I'll build my church. But he said, the Father's good pleasure to give you the keys to the kingdom. I got a feeling our problem has been that we've been trying to do something that he said he would do instead of take the keys that he gave us to do what we're meant to do. So we're transition. Huge transitions going on. We've gone from denominationalism, which is a long word to write. to apostleships. None of us in this house have a problem with denominations. None of us. It's denominationalism that we have a problem with. Somebody on the team some years ago said, denominationalism gathers around what we agree over, which means when we disagree, problem. But we move to gathering around relationships. Huge transition that we're a part of. We've gone from control to freedom. Incredible implications organizationally once you start walking that out. Bill, I just caught the last words in the senior leaders group. We've gone from big churches to big people. These things are huge. These transitions are huge. Maybe I should have drawn it bigger or something, you know. But these transitions are huge transitions. We've gone from the man of God and a congregation to the priesthood of all believers. Which incidentally is the third tenet of the Reformation. The first two, salvation by grace alone and Scripture alone, the Catholic Church have agreed with the Lutheran Church that they agree. There are statements, but that is yet to be achieved. And I believe what you're hearing here and what we're hearing around the world is that this, the third tenet of the Reformation, we are moving into that. And I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't become somehow aligned with the 500th anniversary. I feel like there's a connection in the spirit about that. So all of this change. And every one of you is in one of these stages of change. But what does it mean? What are the implications for you? How do we even just begin to understand the change that we're in? Now let me just start for a minute. I'm going to go back to the four quadrants. And I want to start with the why or the mission. So I'm going to start over here with the missional piece. The why. This should be the easiest one for any of us who are believers to discover, because this book is full of it. This book doesn't really help you with structure or the what or the vision. There's obviously a lot in there, but when it comes to why, compared to the corporate world, compared to anybody outside the church environment, this should be easy. The book is full. Let me just run through. I'm not going to read them. I'll just run through. Joel 2, Jeremiah 33, Ephesians 4, Matthew 18, Mark 16, John 17, Revelation 11:15, Isaiah 61, Isaiah 60, Habakkuk 2:14, Isaiah 43, verse 7. That is just a quick list of places that you can find a why. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. Disciple nations. The whole earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of God. Arise and shine, for your light has come. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bind up the brokenhearted, to preach freedom to the captives and release to the prisoners. The Bible is absolutely full. The great first commandment, the Great Commission, it's full of these whys. This shouldn't be a problem. But you know what's happening is we're traveling around the world, and of course we all do it, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And I've been there. I've been to Toronto. I went to Argentina. I went to Pensacola. I believe that what you're doing when you go there and when you come here is this. You are going to get your why back. And some of you kind of need your why back. This is what you need. This is why when we sit and listen to Bill, so many of us are like, oh, that's why. That is why I'm alive. Yeah. And the Bible is full of whys. And I just want to encourage you, some of you today, that's going to be the one that matters to you. You're going to get your why back. And you're going to go back and it'll be, okay, I've got this. It's the mission. It's the why. It's the purpose. Now, we teach in this house, and we've been consistent, and I've stayed consistent. Chris and I probably in particular teach this as much as anybody. We've been consistent in this, that mission is purpose. it's journey, it's why. And that vision over here is, you can see it. And, Chris and I are kind of logical in this because vision, you can see it. It makes sense. Mission's a journey. So we've stuck with this way of defining it. Now, I used to think, to be honest, that you had to have a why and a what. I'd probably err in that direction, but here's what I've begun to notice. And that is, a why without a what is probably okay, but a what without a why is a mistake. And I'll show you in a moment. But I just want to stay here for a minute. Some of you today, you need to get your why back. And you need to dial in to Bill. What was Bill saying on the first night? What's the language of Bill? Now, I'm always very honored the way Bill introduces me. And I know I can say this because he would say this. He would not regard himself as a strategist, an administrative senior leader. But I personally believe he has the highest level of the gift of government on his life. And the gift of government isn't about the what. It's not about the how. It's over here. It's about the why and the culture. Because Bill has been leading us from this side of the board. He's been leading us from the missional, from the wine. It's all about the wine. He's been leading us from the presence. He's been leading us from revival. That's where he's leading us from. And from culture, which I'll get to in a moment. So I do believe that you can just have a strong why. Now, over time, you'll probably end up back over here, but you can start there. Some of you need your why back. Some of you need to have a look at some passages of Scripture. And let me just read this one, the one that I thought to read today, which is Jeremiah 33. Where shall I go? Let's see where I should start. I'll start here. Behold, I will bring to it health and healing. That would do right there, wouldn't it? That would do. This book's full of why. I just want some of you to walk out of here and go, that's my why. I'm going to take that and I'm going to go from there. I will heal them. I will reveal to them an abundance of peace and truth. That's a good why. Just show the world an abundance of peace and truth. You've got a why there that will take you the rest of your days. I'll restore the fortunes of Judah, the fortunes of Israel. I'll rebuild them as they were at first. Wow. Rebuild the kingdom as it was at first. That's good too. I'll cleanse them from all their iniquity by which they have sinned against me. I'll pardon their iniquities by which they've sinned against me. And it shall be to me a name of joy, praise, and glory before all the nations of the earth, which shall hear of all the good which I do for them, and shall fear and tremble because of all the good and all the peace that I make for it. Wow, wow, wow. You shouldn't have trouble with why. I mean, just that one. What about a why that you tell them so much goodness, so much peace, and so much truth that the world trembles? Hey, that would be a good why. My life's mission statement, I'll make the world tremble because he's so good. That will work. You change the world with that. Why? Some of you need to get your why back. You just need to narrow it down. Don't worry about trying to remember every one of the incredible list of things that we throw out here. All of them valuable, all of them important, but the real key is you grab your one. Bill's story, standing here. The first weekend he's here. Revival. One person. We got it. He wasn't standing up and going, let me unpack revival for you. Let me give you the 376 points of ways of recognizing revival when it shows up. And let's put all these scriptures in. It's like, no, there's this one thing that Bill has beating his heart of revival, of seeing the great revivals of old happen again in our time, in our generation. You narrow it down. Get a why so that you can articulate it. Never forget that your congregation spend 2 hours a week in your church that you spend 60 hours a week in. Don't try and give 60 hours of complex why to a congregation that only have 2 hours with you. They need something they can walk out and go, you know why that church is there? That's why. That's why. That's what it's all about. Because if you start there, you'll end up like Bill is with one message that's 500 hours long. But it all begins with revival. It all begins with revival. Get your why. You see, one of the problems, here's a problem. A what without a why. What's a what? A what is, what am I building? I'm going to give you a little illustration of it in a moment, of an example. But you know, your what without a why is a problem. This is the reason why it's a problem. Because if your what doesn't have a why, your what will become your why. And what you will end up doing is that you will reduce what could have been to maintaining what has been. You will reduce what could have been to maintaining what has been, because your what will become your why. And you will have people running around to maintain a what. And this is why you need Danny's message. You need that constant infusion of the why. Why am I alive? I'm on a journey. Many of you know my current journey. It's about evangelism. It's about souls. And something's changed inside of me. I'm not saying that it wasn't there, that I didn't care before. But something changed inside of me. I stood here on Sunday morning, watched 5 people give their lives to the Lord after an altar call. It's become a why. I now travel. I've realized when I travel, I used to go and I'd have sort of various messages. But now, wherever I go now, I know I have to ask myself this one question. Do you preach the gospel today, Paul? That wasn't in me, but that why has got inside of me, and it's changing something. And some of you, what's your why? Get your why back. But your what, you see, your what needs a why. If your what must always serve your why. It always must. And your why must always be stretching your what. It must be out there. You see, you might be started to notice something here. This is the unseen, and this is the seen. This, if you will, is much more connected to the supernatural. And this is much more connected to the natural. And when this is separated from this dies. And this ends. You need a what that's serving a why. A why that's always stretching you. A why that's yet to be seen. A why that hasn't yet happened. And as soon as it's happened, get another one. Go back in and find another one. Honestly, I think sometimes what we end up doing is we make our prophecies more like words of knowledge. And we just live with them. And we forget that what actually happened was the prophecy was given. It happened. Don't camp there and go, isn't God good that he said that this would happen? Start getting hungry for the next prophecy that's impossible, that's yet to happen, because it will keep pulling you forward. We have to have this relationship. This is crucial. And then structure down here. You see, when your what isn't connected to a why, you'll end up maintaining. Now your structure must always serve your what. If your structure doesn't serve your what, it will serve itself. Which is called bureaucracy. And I'm British. We have qualifications in bureaucracy. And I worked in government. I know what it looks like. I can smell it. It's the triplicate thing. It's that you call and go, oh yeah, let me pass you to somebody who can answer that for you. And 330 passes later, no, that's the wrong department. You need to call another number. That's just not, I've been on the phone for 4 hours waiting for you to tell me that this is the wrong number. It's bureaucracy. It's when, you see, this administration is all over this board, but one example of administration is that administrators must always serve the spirit of the organization. Big S or little s? Big S or little s? What's wrong with healthcare in America and the UK? I can tell you in one word. Administration. Because it's administration that's forgotten the spirit it serves. See, administration is not a problem in its own right, but it becomes a problem when it stops serving the spirit of the organization. See, the job of a hospital administrator is to heal people. That's the spirit of the organization. It's the same as education. It's why we need administration that is infused with the supernatural. In other words, connected to this side of the board. Must be connected to this side of the board. So when structure stops having a vision to serve, it becomes bureaucracy and it serves itself. The reality, of course, is that it's the vision that will give you the structure. That's where you get your structure from, by the vision. And then we have culture. A why that doesn't have a culture remains a dream. Because a culture is when your beliefs become lived out behavior. It's when I say, I believe that God is good. I believe that. Well, I've got to walk that out. I've got to stand in the face of a diagnosis and go, he's still good. I've got to live this out. You see, culture is created by core values or beliefs that are evidenced by lived out behavior that create a culture. I taught a reasonable length about this at the June conference, but America has a wonderful example. It's Thanksgiving. What happened was that there was a belief. It was a belief that God provided, the pumpkin, the turkey, the corn, the yam on the East Coast a few hundred years ago. And they sat around and said, thank you. They gave thanks. But that one moment of giving thanks, that one event from those early founding fathers and pilgrims, has ended up being enshrined in the law of a land and has become a way of life for a nation that on the fourth Thursday in November, people jump on planes and get in cars to eat something that they could eat any other day of the year, but they eat it in a context of thankfulness because of a culture. And a why must become the culture. You see, whys that don't have cultures become dreams. That's what they become. And we'll end up dreaming about wine. And if we're bureaucratic, we'll forget to make wine. And if we don't sort out our what, we'll store old wine. And the real tragedy, which some men in here will begin to weep over in a moment, is that we don't get to drink any wine. You see, we'll end up storing old wine, taking people down to our cellar and going, look at the wine. Isn't the wine good? Look at the dust on that there. Oh, don't touch the dust. That's 75 years worth of dust on that one bottle alone. Don't disturb the dust. We'll have people who are dreaming about wine, who hear a story of somebody's cellar and dream that one day they'll have a cellar somehow like that. We'll have people that are forgetting that we were ever in the business of making wine, but the real tragedy is that we stop drinking wine. We're in massive transition, aren't we? Some of you need your why back. But I want to show you a couple of other relationships that there are that I've become aware of in my time here, in what I've observed. Let me start with, what are you building? I have sat for hours into the early hours of the morning with leadership teams with this one question: what are you building? This whole question about the church. What is the church? What are we building? What's it meant to look like? We got people all over the world say, I don't do church anymore. All of that stuff. You know it's going on, don't you? You got people that don't come to your church anymore because they've decided that they don't do church anymore. That they found some other way of doing church. Well, even with the internet, let me tell you, you can do everything that you used to be able to do in church on the internet apart from two things. There may be others, but there are two that stand out for me. Number one is a corporate experience of the presence of God, which is what we were always meant to experience. We're meant to have it on our own as well, of course, but a corporate experience. You can't get that at home. And you can't have face-to-face relationship with other believers. And interestingly, those may be the two most important things that we do in life, is to have a corporate experience and relationship with the Father, and that we live in community with other brothers and sisters. See, this thing about church, what are you building? See, I want some of you to go away with a fresh awareness of what it is you're building. Let me just give you one simple example. It's one I fairly consistently use. Now, we are an apostolic move of God. Hopefully, if I asked you, which I won't, you'd all put your hands up and say you're apostolic, because I told you the answer already. So, you should have passed that one because I gave you the cheat sheet. This is an apostolic move of God. What does that mean? People say to me, they say, oh, we're an apostolic resource center. I say, well, what does that mean? Do you know what that means? So what is it you're building? It's a very simple, and there are people in here who've got a better knowledge of history than I, but when I look at the history of the church, I am aware that there has always been that branch of the church which is in relationship with the Father. That's the main priority. It's the silent orders, the nunneries, the monasteries. The modern day version would be an IHOP. It's an environment where it's all about a relationship between us and Him. And then there's been the family church, where it's been all about the local parish, about the community, about doing family together. And then there's been the evangelistic church, the outreach church, the church that wants to win the lost. I want to suggest to you this, that what we are building in these days is this, that this is an apostolic resource center. Because it's a place where people encounter God. Whether in the building or on the streets, through prayer, through healing, through signs and wonders, through the prophetic. That we are giving people an encounter. So that they become an encounter. So that they give other people encounters. We're building a place where people have an encounter with God, who then become a part of a family. And are trained and equipped to impact their world. See, we're not just doing this anymore. We're not just doing this anymore. And we're not just doing this anymore. And we've had confused evangelists because they didn't have anyone to bring the lost back to. You know, we've had home groups that end up being dead because they're fed up with just, studying together. And then we've had people who are here and who get so locked into what they're doing that they have no relationship with the rest of the world. And there's loads of other examples, and Danny could give a brilliant and humorous run through that, but I'm just quickly giving you the headlines. I believe that when you say in this house, around us, and I personally think this applies to every church in the world, that what we should be building is a place where people encounter God. And it may be why Jesus said, I'll build my church, and how He'll build His church is through encounter. That may be the answer. I haven't fully worked out whether that's everything I think I have to say about it or He has to say. But it may be that that's what He meant, which was, Peter, who do you say I am? You're the Christ, the Son of the living God. You've had an encounter. Out of that encounter, I build my church. That it's encounter that brings people into a family, that trains and equips them to impact their world. That may be enough for you. That might just be enough. Now, the reality is that will actually begin to give you structure, even in just a simple form, and let's put on there support services. I can pretty much give you a very simple organizational structure just from that alone. That you create a team that takes care of relationships with God. You have a team that takes care of relationships with each other. You have a team that takes care of training, equipping, and sending and impacting your city. And you have a support services. Now, I'm not saying that's the only way. I'm just giving you a way in because I know many people struggle and they just want a way in. This is just a way in. Apostolic Resource Center. Build a place where people encounter God, become a part of family, are trained and equipped to impact their world. It looks something like that, and it even starts to give you an organizational structure just to get you started. So when people say, what am I building? I'll typically go there. There are other variations. There are other ways in. But what you'll see is that what is completely connected to the right-hand side of the board, to the supernatural. It must be. So it's when Bill said to me years ago, he said, it's all about the wine, Paul. The wineskin's purpose It's all about the wine, but Bill just told me that there is a wineskin. You see, the wineskin's purpose is to receive, carry, and pour out the wine in whatever form he chooses to come tomorrow. That was the statement Bill gave me. See, some people are like, well, let's not have a structure. Let's not do that thing. And it's like, the reality is, honestly, you can say to me today, hey, we're not going to do church. I'm just going to go and gather all the single mums who have babies and have a home group. And that gets so successful that hundreds of single mums come to your home group. And before you know it, you've got a church. Because you know what? In a few years' time, if you're successful, some of them are going to get married. Their kids are going to grow up. You're going to need youth group. You're going to need pre-marriage care. You're going to need post-marriage care. You're going to need college. You're going to need all the stuff. The issue isn't the programs. It's that the programs end up being an end in themselves instead of serving the vision. Let's have a look at something else. Have a look at the relationship between culture and structure. So at the beginning, what I said was, they're all connected. You can't change your why without affecting your what. You can't affect your what without affecting your structure, your how. And in a way, the culture actually touches them all. It's typically the way I'll draw it is if this back to what, why, and culture, and how, if I just make it that, the what must always serve the why. The how must always serve the what. But the culture will serve all of them, and it will vary from season to season. And there will be different expressions and different emphases of culture depending on the season. So let's have a look at the relationship between culture and structure. And one of the great transitions that we've talked about here, I don't think there's anybody on the front row that hasn't taught on this, is that we've been moving from control to empower. Has anyone not grasped that that's what we're doing? It's leaving a lot of marks up there, isn't it? I need to get rid of some of those. It's a very sensitive laser, I think, on here. I won't make any jokes about sensitive people. That would be unsensitive. Yeah. We've moved from control to empowerment. Now, typically, we will draw that this way, which I'm good with drawing it this way. This is what we're doing. Now, what I want to show you is the relationship that culture has with this. It's very important. This is typically, we would say that this is the boss-led organization, yeah? Is that okay? And let's say the boss has a leadership lid. Let's be generous and make him a 7.5 leadership lid or her. And we end up with we got a rising star here who's a 7 going up. What happens to that rising star in that controlling organization? Well, they only have a couple of options. It's just a couple of options. Split or kill the boss. Now, some people are more subtle in their manner of killing the boss. They might even wait for the boss to die. But that's the only way in that organization that can happen. And this organization is characterized by a suck-up culture, a cover-up culture. Is everyone okay with this? And a buck-up culture. In other words, how do you get on in this organization? You suck up to the boss. That's what you do. And the worst examples of it are the casting room couches in Hollywood, where people give themselves, the whole of themselves. But ultimately, in this organization, people do give a piece of themselves. They suck up. They cover up. Nobody has any problems in this organization because you won't get promoted if you have a problem. No chance. Because no one else has got a problem because they're all covering up their problems. So you go to school of cover-up. How do I cover up? That's why you need stop the pulpit. I want to get off. Because everyone's covering up and they're killing themselves. They're standing in front of their families and preaching a message and their families are going, I don't know that guy. Who's he? We have a cover-up. And we have a buck-up culture. Buck up, work harder. Buck your ideas up, young man. And that culture, that characterizes this culture. You know, this cover up here, you got a load of festering abscesses all over the place around here because people are covering up their stuff, just waiting for that one moment where it blows up on the whole organization. I felt the pain from the front row. But the empowering culture. What I want to show you is where culture is so important, and also, not only that, but how connected this is with increase. Because I've not studied in great detail, but I know there are church growth strategies out there. I know there are church growth organizations out there. But you know, I believe that the best church growth strategy you can possibly have is heaven's culture on earth. That's it. I mean, you'll get a good parking lot that way, but don't start with the parking lot. You'll get a better entrance room, but don't start with the entrance room. That's what happens when you bring heaven's culture. That's the church growth strategy, and I'll demonstrate that the opposite of these three cultures causes increase. But let me just talk about a couple of other things over here. This is a foundation of the apostolic and the prophetic, and I always do this for Dan Farrelly. Of course, Jesus is the head of the church, so just to make sure, he always just likes me to put that in. So that little cross there is for Dan. The apostolic and prophetic. Now, people get hung up about this. I hear it nearly every leader's advance. What do we do if we don't have an apostle and prophet in our church? Well, get one in your life. That's it. That's all the wisdom I have on that. Get one in your life. And because otherwise, what you will do is you will revert over here to structure, and you will create a structure to put an apostle and prophet in that you think are an apostle and prophet, but where the most important thing is that you have a culture that's apostolic and prophetic. And frankly, you don't have to have that from within the four walls of your church. You just need it infused into your life, like Danny was teaching us yesterday. So here we have the apostolic and the prophetic, which is the foundation of this empowering organization. What happens here, let's say we've got our leader here, whatever title we give them, because we haven't worked out what to call them yet in our apostolic world, have we? We still call Pastor Bill, Pastor Bill. I mean, he is Pastor Bill, but he's also Evangelist Bill and Prophet Bill and Teacher Bill and Apostle Bill. So we haven't worked out what to call our leader, quite honestly. Does that make sense? Fortunately, this is a leader's advance, so that helps. Leader with a 7+, same scenario. Rising star with a 7+. What happens in this environment? Well, over here, kill the boss or split, which is why we've had a history of the church dividing and being reduced in size. But over here, we've got something because the leader gets to give them the world. Take the world. Because over here, we've got a father who's raising up sons and daughters, who has embraced the leader's vision. And Bill's language, what he's saying when he introduces me is basically, I didn't have a value for organizational leadership, but I had a value for Paul. He has another phrase, I don't embrace your vision until I see that you've embraced mine. So when you have a leader that realizes that leader is embracing that vision, then you can embrace their vision and give them the world. Because you know that wherever they go, they will represent and serve the Father's vision. That's the culture that we have. Now, what do we have here? What's going on? What's suck up over here? Well, suck up becomes honor. It becomes honor. That's what it is. Suck up's counterfeit honor. That's what it is. And so we have over here honor. Now, of course, suck up only went that way. Suck up only goes up. That's why it's suck up. But honor. But honor goes every direction through the organization. And honor is a massive key to organizational increase. One of my phrases is not original to me, apart from the way I say it, is that if you don't honor the janitor in your organization, you do not have a culture of honor. You don't. Ford, a few years ago in America, had a slogan: everything we do is driven by you. What were they saying? The lady that gets to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, or the guy who makes the breakfast in the cafeteria, is building trucks. That's what a culture of honor looks like. That everyone believes that they are a part of building trucks. I recently heard Sir Alex Ferguson speak, the former manager of Manchester United football team. He's currently a lecturer at Harvard University, and he was lecturing. And he was asked, what if you knew one thing 30 years ago, what's the one thing that you would do differently? The one thing you would do differently. He said, recognition. Recognition and communication. He said, whenever we bring home a cup, when we win the championship, I go to the staff that are washing shirts and say, there's your cup. That's that. This grows organizations. You want increase? This will grow your organization. This is directly related. Honor, the only commandment that comes with a promise. What's the promise? Long life. Why do you get long life? Because when I honor you, I grow from glory to glory myself. Because when I honor you, I learn from you. When I learn from you, I grow. And that's how we get increase. You can't have honor without increase. You can't. And so we end, suck up. Ends. It becomes a culture of honor. And honor is every way through the whole organization. And cover up. Cover up becomes authenticity. See, over here, we've got people living in shame. And they are hiding their stuff. They are a festering abscess waiting to blow up on the walls of the counseling office. But over here, we've got authenticity. Over here, I've got an issue. I've got a problem. And it won't be long in this culture before somebody says, you know that problem you got? You know that Bob sorted that out a year ago. Really? Yeah, Bob's got a testimony. And that Bob's testimony can be your testimony, because the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And I'm over here with my shame and with my abscess and beating myself up, and I'm putting all my energy in to cover up. Nobody must find out that I've got a problem. But over here, I'm immediately connected to people who have a testimony. And their testimony becomes my prophecy. And instead of a festering abscess, I become a part of the strength of the organization. I become the story of the organization. And I'm able to be trusted with more and with the increase. And buck up is identity. Why is it identity? Because we move from working for love to working from love. You know this stuff. It's simple. That we move over here. I'm working out of who I am. I'm working from love, of knowing I'm loved, of knowing I'm accepted, and it will bring increase. Because when we live out of identity, when we live out of honor, when we live out of authenticity, all of these carry biblical promises of increase. Authenticity. When you deal with shame, the Bible says instead of shame, a double portion. Increase. When I live out of identity, when I'm a son, when I'm a daughter, when I live out of knowing who I am, I live in direct connection with the Father. I have His words of love and affirmation and belief flowing into me, and I can do nothing but grow and increase. It is impossible for me to do anything other than that. And what I'm trying to show you here is the connection between culture and structure. You can't create this if you don't change the structure. And you can't put a big person in this structure. You can't do it. See that big person? You know, Bill mentioned it in the senior leaders. We're not trying to build a big church, trying to build big people. Yeah, but you got to be careful what environment you put the big person in. You put the big person in here, you will either kill them, blow them up, blow the organization up, blow somebody else up. You can't do it. Yeah, just have a big explosion. But you see, the same is you you can't put this culture in here either. You can't. You've got to transition it. Now, there will in reality be little triangles in this over here. There will be. And there'll probably be some little ones of this in here. It depends on the organization, what degree a number of those triangles there will be. But the culture you're going for is a culture of empowerment. I'm just trying to get you to see is the connection between these four transitions. If I change my why, that's going to affect my what. Because my why has now become change the world. So now I've got an organization where I've got people who need to know how to change the world. That if I'm changing my culture and I want to see empowerment and the culture of heaven, it is going to affect my organizational structure. They are all connected. Let me just, heading towards a close of that, and I want to make sure I activate some things in closing. Let me just give you one other teaching on organization. That's the relationship there between culture and structure. I want to show you another relationship between culture and structure, which is also very important. And it's to do with what season your organization is in. Now, we're always very aware here that there are people who've just planted a church, and there are people who are leading many churches. So there's a wide diversity. I always start this with the beautiful mum and pop of Silicon Valley. That organizations very often begin in that mum and pop phase. Now, many of you started there. You started your church in mum and pop phase. This is actually the entrepreneurial phase, where the biggest problem is how to spell entrepreneurial. But the entrepreneurial phrase, some of you will be in this. And I'm just bringing this to you just to help you to see where you are in this journey. What's going on? Because some of you may be sitting there with questions about how do I apply Danny? How do I apply Bill? How do I apply Eric? I'm just trying to give you a context which might help you to see, oh, that's where we are. So the entrepreneurial phrase, product or service, that's the question. Now, for most of you in here, that will have been starting a church, planting a church, something of that order. And it's mum and pop. And you work 168 hours a week, each, to do this thing. And you do everything. Now, let me just use a quick example. It's my favorite for this. Let's say that instead of church, let's take it away from church, and let's take it to one of my favorite food groups, which is the Indian curry. Now, let's say, for instance, that we decide, Sue and I, we're going to start making curry and delivering it. Home delivery curry in Reading would be an expression of heaven on earth for me personally. And let's say this is what we need. We need to deliver 2,000, let's make it 1,000. 1,000 curries, home delivery, 1,000 portions at $2 each, so that we have $2,000 on the table at the end of the week. Now, some of you have been in that scenario where that's all you care about. You don't care that you didn't have any sleep all week. We made it. We sold curry this week. Yeah, I'm trying to stay awake, but you did it. That's the mum and pop stage. That's the you're doing everything phase of your organization. And many of you have started there, and some of you might be there. Some of you might be just about to approach there. It then moves to the engineering phase, or the more of the same. Now, what this looks like is we've still got mum and pop. They're here. And what you've got now is that they decide we need a cook, and we need a buyer, and we need delivery, and we need somebody to do the books, and we need somebody to wash up, whatever. Because it's grown. It's expanded. And we can now do 10,000 curries a week at a $2 profit, and we've got 20K on the table at the end of the week. And so we've got more of the same, and mum and pop, they now are in the we know everybody that does everything phase. And many of you have been in that. It's the pain that, we hear. Bill's laughing down here. I've heard the same thing from Randy Clark. It's like, we went away to a revival and came back and we didn't know everybody in our church. And it was the loss of this phase. It was the loss of I can walk around my offices, I can stand at the back door of the church, and I know everybody, and I know everybody that does everything. And this is that phase. Now, the thing about smart leaders is smart leaders are always thinking about what they need in the next phase. They're always thinking that. So if you're here, you should be thinking here. Now, if you're here, you should be thinking here. Now, this is where I think a lot of people are finding themselves in this particular season of transition, and that's multiplication and diversification. I really should choose some shorter words somewhere. Multiplication and diversification. What is that? We actually went through this. This house is an incredible example of this challenge. What does it look like? Well, let's stay with curry for the minute. We've got Mum and Pop who are happily cooking the curry, but then we just have this genius idea. Indians going well. We're really successful. Why don't we start Chinese food? And we're probably going to need some help, some support services here. AKA, we have a church. Let's start a school. Or let's start a network. Something along those lines. Many of you are in this place. Now, one of the great challenges here is that we've got good at this. We're really good at this. Our chicken tikka masala and naan bread is the best in Reading. So we're good at it. Now, the danger is that we shift our energy over here. And we forget the thing that made us famous. The other thing that's important here, which both Bill and Chris, I think we probably all teach this, but is we are going to need a different culture here, because this is manufacturing and this is R&D. Because I don't know how to make a spring roll. So I got to test this out. I got to work out what's the best spring roll for the palate of Reading, so to speak. I'm in R&D. Manufacturing, I want a 99.9% get it right every time. But over here, it's a question mark what percentage. This is important to understand. This is, I think, what Chris did an amazing job with the school is really creating the school into this R&D environment. So it's important to recognize what's going on here, that I need a different culture. So, if you go back to the quadrant over here, this culture is going to have some question marks depending on where you are in the transition of your organization. So we've established that because we've got to be careful. This is R&D, this is manufacturing. Plus, don't put all of your energy over here and fail in the area where you were successful, which we were very close to doing at Bethel. Because when I first came here, we had a church, a tiny itty-bitty school, and a itty-bitty network because the Leaders Advance were basically sitting up the front here in a small horseshoe. But over time, we ended up with a school of thousands and a network of people coming here from all over the world. And the people who came to church here couldn't get to church. They couldn't get up the hill. Even if they could, they might not have wanted to. They couldn't get in the nursery. We had a problem. And we adjusted with the genius of putting Eric and Candice in the local church. And we got back here. But effectively what happened was that we shifted our energy, our resources over to these R&D areas. And we didn't, but circumstances caused us to take our eye, if I can put it that way. I think we were aware of it, so saying take my eye off it would be wrong. But that suffered because of this transition. This is really important that we understand. I just want you to understand where you are. If you might be sitting there going, we want to start a school. Great, yeah, you want to start a school. Yeah, but you need to think through some of what's going on. Some of you might even be thinking we're going to start a school without a church, which is one of the things that we've been very strong about saying that's not a good idea. Why? Because if you put 50 people in a room together for 3 days a week, you just created a thing called church. Because you will have a group of people who encounter God, become a part of a family, and are trained and equipped to change their world. And what you thought was just a school and not a threat to the church down the road just became a church. It's about understanding what's happening. And understanding. Now, the other crucial thing about this picture on the right-hand side is this. And that is, Mum and Pop did everything here, yeah? They knew how to do it, and they did everything. Mum and Pop here know everybody that does everything. But over here, we've got an organization happening. And maybe I'll just draw this again just so it's clean in my... What we've got here is we've got mum and pop. We've maybe got 4 department functional heads, senior leaders, and under each of them, we've got the engineering model under there. Now, where I knew everybody here, now I can't possibly know everybody there. I've got a different organization going on, so this becomes mum and pop's key organization. And this is where they invest. This also will signal a change in the job description of the senior leader, because the senior leader is now taking hands off, giving space for these people to rise up into, which is again linked to empowerment. It's linked to embracing the vision of the sons and daughters. And the most important thing here is that these people here need to be sons and daughters. Which means that over here, I need to be thinking about my sons and daughters. I need to be thinking, raise up my sons and daughters. It's no good getting here and going, I don't have anybody I can trust with that. No, it should have been happening over here. And then this becomes the family or the organization here. And this is where heaven's government has to be family. I don't have time to go through this piece, but a lot of people struggle with organization and family. Let me use Bill and I as an example. When Bill has a family reunion, it's a conference. It takes 6 months to get everybody to have the same day off. That doesn't account for being on the same continent. Just the same time off. It's a massive operation. The Manwaring family, well, we do live apart, so there are some challenges. But basically, a Manwaring family reunion is a booth at Red Robin we can fit in. And the amount of organisation, considerably less. Is Bill's less family because it took more organisation? No. The key is the lens that we're looking through. And if the lens you're looking through is the right lens, then it doesn't matter how much organization you put into it, you can still have family. And this is where I want to end. I want to end by getting you to start thinking about your questions to God about what I'm saying. What's your what? What are you building? And once you get your what, the incredible thing is, it will give you declarations. Because you can start declaring what you're building. It becomes the language of your declaration. Which again, this connects this to the spiritual. It connects it to the supernatural. You know, Danny was saying yesterday, that we can end up over here if we're not careful with museums. We can. We really can end up with museums. We can end up with cellars full of old wine. We need to know what we're building. We need to know that our what is serving our why. What's your why? Because your why, again, will give you declarations. I'm hoping I've stimulated you just to think that, okay, what are we building? If you say, we're building an apostolic resource center for, wherever, Fresno, one of my favorite places. Then you start to create some language. You start to give yourself declarations. Oh, Fresno is a place where people encounter God. Fresno is a place where people can come and be a part of family. Fresno is a place where we raise up revivalists that are trained and equipped to transform Fresno. Do you see what I'm saying? It gives you language. And of course, language is hugely connected to culture as well. Or your why. What's your why? Because here, our why, Bethel's mission is revival, the personal, regional, and global expansion of his kingdom through his manifest presence. That's our mission statement here. And it gives us declarations. It will give it to you. What's your why? What's your what? Your culture. What maybe are the 2 or 3 cultures that you need to emphasize right now at this moment in time? And bear in mind, that's going to be related to your season. And it might be connected to the who in there. But what season are you in? What's the culture we need right now? You see, if you're in R&D, you might need a culture of risk and faith. That might be the culture that you really need to get. And you might have a church that's been so bound up and so controlled that that's the one that you need to get the breakthrough in this season. And the culture, you see your culture now, we just got declarations. I don't know how many years it was going on for, but I don't think many Sundays for probably 10 years that Bill stood here and didn't say, God is in a good mood. It's a declaration because we're going after a culture. It became a declaration. It became our language. We've got the kids' offering reading, which has got that all wrapped up in it. It gives us this language that we can speak about. And of course, our structure, which is a family structure. Heaven's government is family. And it gives you, once again, declarations. You see, my challenge to you today is, I want to get you to narrow down. It can be overwhelming coming here. I mean, some of you have been a million times, so maybe you're less overwhelmed than others. But some of you might be going, wow, there's so many things I've got to take account of. What do I do with all these things I've got to take account of? Well, let's just narrow them down and realize this. Your what must serve your why. It must. Some of you, get your why back. Go through the Bible and go, what are the whys in the Bible that jump out for me? Get your why back and have a what that serves a why. Make sure that any structure that you build serves your what. And the culture must serve your what, your why, and your how. And don't forget that over here is the supernatural. Over here is the natural. And these must be connected. One of my phrases about administration is this: an administration that doesn't embrace the supernatural will reduce a move of God to what man can do without God. But a move of God that doesn't embrace the gift of administration will limit the potential of that move of God for the generations to come. These two sides of the board must be connected. They must be. Because we want, every one of us in this room, I know this is true, we want to drink wine. That's what we want to do. We don't want to store it. We don't want to spill it. We don't want to dream about it. We don't want to forget to make it. We want to drink it in whatever form he chooses to come tomorrow. So why don't you stand? I want to invite you in your head right now just to take one of those things I've said. Just one for you. Maybe one culture. Maybe one why. Maybe one what. Maybe one aspect of the structure of the season that you're in. And begin to declare. Begin to declare. Or maybe for some of you, it's more of a cry. God, give me my why back. Give me my why back. I want to go home from Bethel, Reading with a new why, with a fresh why. I want to go back dripping with fresh new wine. Some of you maybe just need to say that. Give me my why back. My wine back as well, but my why back. Give me my why back. Give me something to burn for. Give me something to live for. Give me something to lay down my life for. Because as leaders, when you get hungry, the rest of your people will follow. And you owe it to them to go home with a new why, a fresh why, a why that's passionate. Father, I ask today that you would pour out your wine. You'd pour out your wine. And that we would know how to carry it, how to pour it out, how to value it. That we would know what wineskins to build. But we want our why back. We want a reason to live and a reason to die. We want that. Give us our why back, I pray, for the honor of your name and the increase of your kingdom. Amen. Amen.